So we talked about a team that's improved a little bit on defense here, but let's talk about the best offense in the SEC, and that belongs to the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Roll
With
offense.
Alabama puts up 100 points for the eighth time this season against Texas A&M. Tide win it 100-75. The ceiling is looking super high right now for Alabama. David, how high are these ceilings?
Yeah, so this is an outrageously good offense. Bama can go as high as their offense is willing to take them. Only teams that are going to be able to stop them have elite defenses. That's who's going to be able to stop the Tide. That's it. That's the list. Still, like you've got teams that are going to have to be exceptional on defense to stop the Tide. There are two choices when you face Alabama. You can outscore them or beat them on defense, and I think only one of those is a real possibility. Because frankly, there's not many teams who are going to be able to outscore Alabama unless they have an offshooting night. But right now, Alabama sitting alone on top of the SEC standings right now. They're tailed by only Tennessee. Game between the Tide and Vols that is going to be coming up in Coleman. That's going to be epic. That's going to be one of the biggest games of the season. And as it should be, you're going to have probably the best defense in the SEC facing the best offense in the SEC for a chance at a conference title. Huge, huge game. But a big guy who gets this thing going is someone we've talked about throughout the course of the season, someone who's exceptional. Mark Sears is an elite talent, huge game against Texas A&M. I mean, look at it. Look at the numbers for Mark Sears. 23 points, 4 rebounds, 4 3-point field goals made, 4 assists, and he shoots 57% from the field. Just an exceptional game from Mark Sears. If you don't have Mark Sears, I don't know what you're doing with this Alabama, like where this Alabama team would be. It's his team and he knows it now. This is all him, and he is just an outstanding talent. Maddie, any thoughts on Mark Sears?
Yeah, I think he's really stepped up, been that leadership role that we kind of toyed around with, something that they might be missing this season.
We called
But
him the glue guy last year. We called him the
yeah,
glue guy last year. Yeah.
yeah, but I think he's really, taking this team and running with it. I honestly think he is one of the big contributions to why they continue to win. At playing excellent in that point guard position, being able to, be straight up floor general, honestly, I think is what we need to call Mark Sears right now. Because the way he is directing this team, especially when we talk about, the miss and Charles Bediako not really having much of a front court, I think he helps mitigate that by helping to distribute with a higher basketball IQ and kind of subvert the fact that their front court's a little bit lacking.
And it helps that Grant Nelson has stepped his game up too in that front
Yeah,
court as well. Yeah, he's
for
stepped
sure.
up over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, but definitely, something to look at. I think if this Bama team doesn't have Mark Sears, we'd be having a completely different conversation about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we talked last week about Kentucky and their defensive concerns, and Kentucky and Alabama are similar teams. Obviously, Alabama with the better offense. I mean, it's clearly on the map. They're like first and second in every category of offense. When you look at Alabama, they're outstanding. But my only concern with the Tide is their defense, and that's because it's fairly average. As we mentioned with Kentucky last week, since 2012. Only 3 Final Four teams have ranked outside the top 40 in adjusted defensive efficiency. Tide sit in the 70s nationally. They sit right in the middle of the pack in the FCC. They're kind of like, you know what? I know Tide fans are big football fans. There's a lot of football fans out there in Alabama with their history. This is kind of like watching Big 12 football. Just a little bit. I think this is I think in the tournament they can make a very deep run when they get to the NCAA. It's not just going to be a team that plays good defense. That team is going to have also something of a form of offense to keep something of a pace with them too, to keep pace with Alabama. But that's kind of where the limit's at. If Bama had a better defense, I would have them as national championship contenders. But like Big 12 football, they kind of remind me of Oklahoma. You know how Oklahoma was always making the playoffs. They win the Big 12 conference, and then they would face somebody who would have a much better defense than what they were used to seeing in the Big 12. And that's my concern with this Alabama team, is that there's other teams that are a little bit more complete. But they can go far. They really gonna go far. I feel like, we talked about Sweet 16. I think Sweet 16 is definitely on the table for this Alabama team. They seem certainly like a second weekend team and one to definitely get hyped about because this offense is outstanding. and they can outscore a lot of teams. So that's the thing with Alabama.
Yeah, for sure. Bama's offense, obviously spectacular. But that's the thing. The tournament's not just about offense. If we were looking at, 3-point shooting competitions, they'd rank up there with the top. But I think when they're gonna see teams that are similar to, let's say, Tennessee or now possibly Kentucky, if they continue on with the defense that they had against
We'll see.
Auburn.
Yeah.
If they improve on defense like we saw with Kentucky, their opportunities obviously skyrocket. I think we can see Elite 8, maybe even better, if they ramp up their defense before we get into the tournament. Um, so it's just one of those kinda back and forth. I'm not really sure how they're gonna fare in March if they don't get their defense going.
And one more thing, just kind of in defense of this defense, because I know Tide fans are going to point it out. They played a heck of a non-conference schedule, and they were playing good teams throughout the course. So these numbers might be a little bit more inflated, but I still think they probably range if they played somewhere a little bit more in the middle of the scheduling, like top middle. They'd still be somewhere like 50, 60 on defense. So like that's personal opinion. Obviously, there's no way to know those numbers, but like their defense is probably a little bit better than where they're ranked in their adjusted defense, but I don't think it's in that top 40 category. And I think a big reason of that is what they're missing in the front court.